Hello there, my name is Oli and this is from Another Side channel. Some time ago I decided to watch the Chernobyl series from the HBO channel. The creators did a great job, but I couldn't help but notice a few mistakes here and there, and I think that you might want to know about them if you have already watched the series or are going to watch it. Some say it is too late considering that the series is now more than a year old, but I think better late than never. I decided to turn on the whiner mode at full power and highlight almost every error that I know of. To explain some of them, I will need to talk about the traditions and day-to-day life in those years, so these videos will be a little bit like a tour into the life of people of that time in that country so that you could understand and know more. I will analyze each episode in a separate video. I hope you will like it. If this is the case, consider subscribing. Before you start watching, a spoiler alert is in effect. Now let's start. The first episode begins with Legassov's apartment, and to me it looks bad. See, Legassov was an academician, or academic as Russians say it, that is a member of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR. An academician was a more honorary title than a professor, and there were about 250 of them all over the country. These people were immensely respected and were considered to be rich because they had some of the highest salaries in the country. They were even allowed to have a servant to clean their houses for them, as their time was considered to be precious. Legassov himself lived in a mansion at 26 Pikhotnaya Street, Moscow, and I am sure it must have looked much better. In general, when we talk about how much people earned in the USSR, it was very much different from what we have today. For instance, an army general earned around 350 rubles. A minister would get 800 rubles, a miner up to 1000 rubles. Yes, miners and many other workers would earn more than a minister, but teachers and doctors only earned around 120 to 150 rubles. And ruble had about the same value as a US dollar, so it wasn't too much, but you should remember about free healthcare, free education and free accommodation. So people didn't have to save money for a house to buy. You still could buy your own house or an apartment, but if you didn't want to, you could just get it from the state. Now, coming back to the episode. It should be noted that the color tones throughout the series are shown in blue, green or gray tones. You probably noticed this. Whenever they show, for example, Mexico, they always give yellowish tones, while Russia is always in blue tones. It is quite stereotypical. Traditions are traditions, I guess. Then the professor is shown anxiously hiding cassettes in a ventilation passage outside his home. In reality, he never hid them. When they were found, there was a note for Vladimir Gubarev, that is Vladimir Gubarev, his journalist friend. There were 5 cassettes, not 6 as shown in the series. The audio records are consistent with the report he read to the IAEA in Vienna and the one that was published in the journal called Communist, which is the official journal of the party. The records set out a more complete report on the events of 1986. He decided to record his voice because his health was deteriorating and he couldn't write by hand or type. Then he hangs himself. There is no mistake here, it did happen, but the fact is, this was not his first attempt at suicide. A year earlier, the academician swallowed some pills after finding out how strong the radiation damage to his body turned out to be in the disaster zone. But we will talk about his death in more detail later. The first negative character is shown, that is Deputy Chief Engineer for Operation of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, Dyatlov. On that night, his goal was an emergency reactor shutdown experiment. I will explain it in the video for the last episode of the series. When the fire starts, Dyatlov states that the cause to that is an exploded cooling tank and requires water to be supplied to cool the reactor core. He orders the interns to manually lower the rods into the reactor core in order to slow it down. Dyatlov actually gave such an order, but immediately tried to stop the interns, although didn't manage to do so. The interns did not get the rods, but received the dose of radiation, which cost them both their lives. In addition, in reality, Dyatlov never insisted that the cooling tank exploded. He didn't understand what had happened, so he tried to investigate himself. On the night of the explosion, Dyatlov went around the ruins twice, at 1:40 and 2 a.m., but he still didn't find out what really had happened. The initial explosion killed 2 people. One was killed by boiling water and the other was crushed by pieces of construction. We see Pyotr Palamarchuk, who just pulled out one of the dead. Later in the film, his death is shown, although in reality he is still alive to this day. But he still got a burn. He had skin transplanted from his back onto his legs. There is also a scene with a fireman who picks up a piece of radioactive graphite and as soon screams in pain looking at his burned hands. The pieces of graphite that were actually on the roof were not taken with hands. At least there is no such evidence. Firefighters had to kick them down so that they would not set fire to the roof covering. Besides, you can't get such a burn from a radioactive material. It doesn't work that way. So most of the scenes where people get burns are fake. The creators did it for drama. In addition, a rooftop fire is a myth. There were several pockets of flame. They were soon, within 4.5 hours actually, extinguished. Then we see civilians who went to look at the fire. It is hard to imagine that happening since many residents of Pripyat worked at the power plant. They were aware of the dangers of radiation since they studied at schools, and there was, the Cold War going on, and people had to go through nuclear attack drills every now and then, so they knew a little bit about radioactivity. It is unlikely that they went to look at the fire at the nuclear power plant, especially with children. I mean, why would you take your child out of its bed at night anyway? Again, more drama. But not only do they go look at the nuclear power plant with the children, they drink vodka there. In general, there will be a lot of scenes with vodka in them in the series. The problem is that at that time the Gorbachev's dry law or prohibition was in effect in the country, and all drinks stronger than 8% of alcohol were banned. The creators didn't do their homework. Or maybe they knew about the prohibition but decided to stick with the stereotypes anyway. Then the ashes from the fire fall on everyone. There is no evidence that people observed this. Moreover, on that night the wind blew in a different direction from the plant. In addition, the town is 3 kilometers away from the nuclear power plant, and having so much ash at such a distance is unlikely. Then a meeting is shown in the bunker at 5:20 in the morning, at which they decided not to tell anyone about the accident. The truth is that at 5 a.m. in the morning in Moscow they already knew about what had happened. In this case, the signal 1, 2, 3, 4 was received, which meant that the situation with a nuclear hazard, radiation hazard, fire hazard and explosive danger arose at the station. That means all possible hazards were present. Besides, the shown meeting at 5:20 never happened and the bunker does not exist. Another detail, when one of those present says that the air is glowing, Dyatlov says that this is a completely normal phenomenon, the Vavilov-Cherenkov effect. And no, this is not a normal phenomenon. The glow is observed only when particles pass through the medium at a speed greater than the speed of light in this medium. In water, the speed of light is much slower, around 25 to 50%, so it is possible to accelerate particles to such speed, but to do that in air, the amount of energy would be enormous. A person working in this field with proper education simply could not say this. When Dyatlov gets sick, we see this picture. The black smoke is shown throughout the whole series. In fact, it was not there. The fire was extinguished within 4.5 hours. Then there was only steam, so the column of smoke should have been white. Then in the morning, Legassov receives a call. In his audio recordings, he says that he only learned about the incident at noon of the following day. A little detail. He was called Valery Legassov. In fact, the Russians don't do that. It is either the name and patronym, Valery Alexeyevich, or Comrade Legassov, or full name, Valery Alexeyevich Legassov. In the same way, no one would say Vladimir I. Lenin. It's either Comrade Lenin or Vladimir Ilyich or Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. And in general, in those days, no one would talk like that to scientists, as they were very respected. Well, that is it for episode 1. Subscribe if you want to know about the details of the following episodes. And if you have any questions, please write them down in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them. This is it. See you next time. Bye.